This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Spoiler alert, here's the swoon-inducing ending to Horatio Alger's most famous story, Ragged Dick. When, in short, you were Ragged Dick, you must drop that name and think of yourself now as Richard Hunter Esquire, said our hero, smiling. A young gentleman on the way to fame and fortune, added Fosdick. Well, fame and fortune were not guaranteed for any of Mr. Alger's heroes, nor for the very real Ted Clark. Mr. Clark did something that is seldom seen. He rose from a shipping clerk to be the chief executive officer of a major U.S. corporation. Is it possible to rise in business from an entry-level grunt job to the corner office? Ted Clark offers his insights in this Biz News interview podcast. Ted, many people root for the underdog, but can the underdog actually succeed in today's business world? You did, but are you the last of them?
No, I think they can, right? I see it. I just retired just 3 weeks ago from being chief operating officer of H.B. Fuller Corporation, and we spend a lot of time working with people from the shop floor, trying to help them, actualize their vision to be a supervisor or manager, whatever it might be. And I do think so. I mean, I think that I'm sure you heard it when you were a kid, all those Horatio Alger stories. People sort of starting at the bottom and working their way up. And I think there clearly is a path to that. I like to tell people that leadership is something that you can learn, right? I mean, it's and you learn it in lots of different places, and the military and sports or whatever it might be. And then the other side of it is sort of the technical side. You learn how to do something, right? In college, you learn how to be a business person or a chemist or whatever it might be. So it's a little tougher when you did like I did. I had to learn the technical stuff on the job, and then kind of hone my leadership skills with the help of mentors, right? So I had a lot of really great mentors, and I think that model is being kind of reevaluated in companies because of the shortage of labor and so forth, right? So it's hard to find good frontline leaders in companies these days, and unless you take the initiative to help develop them, lots of companies are going to be sort of lamenting the fact that they can't get good people to work for them.
Now, you mentioned mentors. That's an important aspect for many people's careers. But how does a young person, or a middle-aged person for that matter, find the right mentor, or even a mentor, period?
Yeah, I think I get that question a lot from people that I mentor, actually, and I try to tell them, look at don't wait around for your formal mentoring program if you're working at a company, right? Some companies have them, some companies don't. And they're great when they do, right? It's, that's a nice thing to do. It's intentional. But, if you're a young person, you need to sort of really start with networking, right? You need to start sort of meeting people around the company, asking questions. These informal mentors, I think, are probably more powerful in many respects than having a single mentor, right? So it's nice to have a single mentor because you have somebody to bounce a lot of ideas off of. But, if you want to learn, about accounting or finance, you need to go find somebody in accounting and finance that's willing to talk to you about those things, right? Or if you want to understand about logistics or, technology or whatever it is, and part of that is, I call it sort of selling internally and externally, right? So, and I was trained in a type of sales called need satisfaction selling, where you sort of ask open questions, you listen, and then you learn, right? So that's the first thing, is to ask questions. I mean, you said at the start, the questions don't have to be the smartest questions; they just have to be sincere questions. And people like to be asked questions. I mean, I think that's what I've found over the years is, it's flattering for young people may not realize it, but it's flattering for people that have experience in the company to be asked questions, right? To be thought of enough where I'd like to understand something from your experience that might help me, is it's a flattering thing for people that are getting the questions asked to. So I think people shouldn't be afraid of sort of engaging with people and being curious, right? So being curious also sends a signal to people in the company that you're interested in learning, right? And that's what that's what a company wants to see, right? They don't want sort of automatrons that are just doing, well, some may, but good companies shouldn't want people that just, I just want you to do this and I want you to keep with this process and that's all I want you to think about, right? Had a guy that I worked with for years who was an operations guy, said, for every two hands you get a free brain, right? So this is kind of what I think companies these days have to really be, if they want to be agile and if they want to develop people, they have to really be thinking about these relationships more seriously and how to develop them.
A lot of company owners and managers complain, well, there's just no talent out there to hire to fill our positions. Are they overlooking stuff that they should be picking and developing?
Yeah, I think so. There's a mismatch, right? So there's a lot of open jobs, which, they're not the skills to fill those jobs, right? And a lot of those end up being in sort of frontline supervision, particularly, I'm in the manufacturing business, right? So you need people to help run the factories, right? And, hard to get maintenance engineers as an example, or maintenance people, or electricians to keep the equipment running. And, good companies now are really kind of trying to identify through testing and other means people that have, that if it was available might have gone to, wood shop or metal shop or learned something about electricity in school that they don't train anymore in high school, right? So you almost have to sort of take the initiative to train your own people. We do that in partnership with junior colleges and things like that. But yeah, if you want to fill these jobs these days, you have to take the initiative to train people, because competition for available resources is very high. Electrician now, I mean, you're probably better off being an electrician than a doctor these days in terms of how much money you can make. So, because these skills are, it's supply and demand, right? And I think that's kind of what's happened, I think, with, I tell people, if you look at the adults in the workforce, only about a third of them have 4-year degrees. So that means 2/3 of every adult is got maybe a high school, maybe some college that's out there. And you can't tell me that within that demographic, there's going to be lots and lots of great leaders that could be developed and given an opportunity. And, you do see this now a lot with, big corporations now reducing, they sort of overinflated the importance of a college degree at the starting levels, right? So, you were saying, well, you have to have a college degree to be a frontline supervisor in a manufacturing plant. Well, is that right? I mean, I'm not quite sure that's actually the right thing to do, right? Because, people that work in the plant are going to learn these processes, learn these things, understand what works and what doesn't work. And if you can find people that have, sort of an innate leadership capability, that's the people we should be developing.
Ted, you started your career right out of high school as a shipping clerk?
Yeah, I did. I actually, well, I was a clerk. So I started as a clerk at one place for a short period of time, but then I got a full-time job as a shipping clerk when I was 19. So, and that company, I started at that company, was called PRC, and I started at the division called Semco, and I worked there for the next 26 years. And I rose from a shipping clerk to the CEO of the company in 22 years, right? So it was, kind of they call this an unlikely career path, right? And it was really as a result of, I had some really great mentors, but, I earned the right? I mean, I continue to earn, by initiative and showing people that I was curious and I wanted to learn more. People are, if you show that, people will want to help you, right? They'll want to help you learn. And, companies look for this all the time. They really are looking with people with initiative. And, sometimes we get, I know, working in a bigger corporation, right? people don't get exposed to people, a lot more senior. And I was fortunate that it was a small company, but it was a public company. It was the smallest cap company on the New York Stock Exchange, but you'd see the CEO when you were walking around, right? So you got to know people, and as long as you were respectful and you showed them that you're working hard, they were willing to give you the time to ask questions and learn from them.
So learning on the job and learning from mentors on the job, key to your success, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's the main thing, right? I did have a few, I don't want to be, as if I'm anti-college, because I think it's important. People should do that if that's what they want to do. I'm just trying to point out there's other ways, right? So, as an example, I went to a Xerox sales training course. I was a horrible salesperson, and I actually sort of asked the company to take me out of a sales role, which they did for a while. But I knew that I'd have to, learn that skill at some point. And they sent me to a sales course put on by Xerox at the time, built around need satisfaction selling. And it just opened up everything for me, right? So it's just a few of these things that were kind of more much more transformational than just sort of going to school for 4 years, right? Just popped something in my brain. I learned how to read a P&L and a balance sheet from a pamphlet that an accountant put on my desk when I was about 24, 25 years old. And so, you still need to learn these things, right? So it's not like you can just avoid the idea that you have to, be educated. You have to learn, but you don't necessarily, that this whole idea of sort of formal education. I think it's important if people really want to do something, right? They know they want to be a doctor or a dentist or a chemist or in some of these STEM fields that are very interesting, that you really do need to go to school to get that training. But I think leadership and sort of learning on the job is a pretty good substitute in not every you can't do this in every industry, but certainly the industry that I was in, I was able to navigate that to be able to run the company.
So if Horatio Alger were still around these days writing his books, he could continue to find good characters and stories.
Yeah, he could. It's amazing, since I've written the book, I've been traveling around, and I was in England about a month ago, and we'd acquired a company there, and the managing director, we were having dinner and talking about it. He says, in the UK, I just have the equivalent of a high school degree, right? And he was the managing director of a company doing, 60, 70 million in sales, and worked his way up from the bottom like I did, right? So these stories are, they're out there more than you think. There was a genome study by G.H. Smart, where they looked at a couple thousand CEOs, and they found out roughly 8% of those CEOs didn't have a college degree. So if you roughly extrapolate that out to the 6 million CEOs that are in the U.S., that's a pretty significant sort of subgroup. And what they found was that those CEOs tended to be people that stayed longer in their industry, right? So they were more industry specific, learned on the job, were overperformers at every level, right? So they to a certain extent sort of understood their value, right? So they understood their value proposition, which was not necessarily just being a good, MBA type, sort of CEO. It's like, they understood their industries at a biological level, had good leadership skills, good kind of strategic sense, were able to put that together to become CEOs of their businesses.
Well, you have had an outstanding career with one success after another, but nothing teaches quite as effectively as a bad experience. Did you make mistakes in your career? And if so, as you look back on it, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, of course. But probably I call this a mistake, but in retrospect, it was a good thing for me. But when I left, I became CEO of PRC and was CEO for 6 years. Had a great record. Sold the company to PPG for a significant amount of money, and then I wanted to get involved in private equity. Just started to look for a job, and got involved with a sort of a turnaround situation. And I was pretty confident of myself in those days, and it was a little bigger. It was a little bigger thing than I thought once I got involved in it. And we ended up, rather than sort of turning it around, we ended up sort of understanding there were more problems than the owner had thought, and we ended up putting it in bankruptcy protection, Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and did a turnaround in that context, right? So it was a grind, right? And it took 2.5 years. We managed to get it sorted out and get it out of bankruptcy and back as an operating company. But my failure there was not to recognize sort of my own core value, right? Which was really about, I understood the adhesive sealants and coatings business extremely well, right? And then I went into a different industry. And to my point about, sort of like, where do you create value? It's not necessarily because you're just a good executive, right? So there's value in being a good executive, but if you want to create extra value and create real wealth for yourself and investors, it's about what do you really know well, right? I mean, and so after I went through that experience, I did some soul searching and developed a thesis to build an adhesives and sealants company. Went out and got backing from a private equity firm to committed about $100 million in equity for me to go out and buy a platform company and then build that through acquisition and my goal was to build a $300 to $500 million adhesives and sealants business, adhesives, sealants and coatings business. And that's eventually what I did, and which is in my next book, which comes out in September, which is about how you can actualize a vision by finding partners and equity capital to go out and build a business from scratch, basically. So
how do you find those good partners?
Yeah, so it's like everything else. There's what I've found in my life is there's a market for everything, right? So there are people out there, business buy-side business brokers, et cetera. And there's some that specialize in sort of, kind of buy and build strategies. And there happened to be a guy in Pasadena that I'd been talking to for a number of years, and he'd approached me, and I didn't really think much of the idea when I was working at PRC, and I remembered him, and I went back and talked to him, and together we I used my knowledge to help develop a thesis around a thesis and a business plan. And then they helped to identify potential private equity backers, right? So kind of middle market private equity firms that had invested in similar areas in the past, and then kind of matched us up, right? And then I went out and sort of pitched the deal to people. And I was surprised. I mean, we had quite a bit of interest in what we were doing, and it was sort of based on my background, and again, the value that I could bring based on my experience with PRC to build a business in a segment that I knew a lot about. And so that's how we got the original. I got a commitment for $100 million in equity, and we went out and found a platform company, acquired that, and then did 18 acquisitions, over kind of a 14-year period to build it from, the original company we bought was doing about 30 million in sales. And ultimately, when I sold the company to H.B. Fuller, we were doing close to 700 million in sales and significant amount of, EBITDA accretion over that period of time. So, yeah, I mean, all kinds of things are possible if you sort of ask the right people the right questions and kind of figure out, what's the market for this, what's the market for that, and who's in that market, and how does it work, and and that's again one of the things in the book is just sort of remain curious about business and what's going on around you and what's possible, and kind of getting out of your comfort zone as much as possible, without sort of going off the rails, right? So you got to be a little careful with what you're doing.
Ted, take a second to tell our listeners and viewers again the name of the book.
Yeah, the book is Shipping Clerk to CEO, and it's the little subtitle is The Power of Curiosity, Will, and Self-Directed Learning, right? So it's all about sort of kind of finding yourself in a situation and sort of step by step kind of figuring out. And I didn't start thinking I was going to be a CEO. I started thinking I was going to be a shipping clerk. And I did that for a while, and I thought, well, maybe I could be a customer service person. So how do I get there? And then maybe I could be this, and maybe I could be that. And when I became a CEO, it's like, okay, well, now I'm a CEO. I know I can do this, but maybe I can be an entrepreneur, and maybe I can start my own business. And how would I do that? So it's this idea of at every level, sort of creating your own vision for what you're doing, your own set of objectives, strategies, and tactics to sort of create enough differentiation with what you're doing that people will allow you to like take a chance on the next job and the next job and the next job, basically.
And you also bring an awful lot of enthusiasm to the project, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and and that's for me, it's always been about having, I would say having fun in the sense of having fun, but having fun in the sense that your mind's working all the time, and you're sort of part of a part of like sort of creating your own future by just trying things, right? So, and I encourage people that I mentor, it's okay to try things. It's okay to fail. You're not going to shut the company down if you're in the shipping department to do something. It's you can learn from it. When you're the CEO, sometimes maybe you got to be a little bit more careful, but as you're working your way up, you should be encouraged to try things and fail a little bit to learn from it. And then, you're going to try things and they're going to be really successful too, right? So that's creates the confidence that you need to, to aspire to the next level.
Ted, I suspect you've got a website we can go to.
Yes, it's www.shippingclerk2ceo.com, or you can go to tedclarkauthor.com, and the information on the book's in there, and how you can order it. You can get it on Amazon, and Barnes and Noble, and all the booksellers are carrying it now. So.
Ted, what would you like to tell our audience that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
Well, I guess and you kind of brought it up. I mean, when I wrote the book, I started writing it about like what I did, and what I really learned in writing the book is not so much what I did, it's what other people did for me, right? So I mean, I had to earn it, but it really became a book about the importance of mentors and networking, and not networking in the sense of glad handing, but this sort of networking in the sense of like just getting to know people and understanding what they do and why they do it, right? And I think that's probably the most important thing is like, why do you want to do these things? You're gonna, it's a grind. I mean, it's not all fun. You got to work hard, and so you have to sort of have your own reasons why you want to achieve and accomplish what you want to do, and have that really clear in your head as to like what's motivating you to do things, right? And so you don't get stuck in a sort of a rut somewhere, and then just sort of wonder, what am I going to do now, right? So having that sort of using vision from the very start is like, I think, really important for people who want to develop. And it doesn't have to be like a long-term vision, just a short-term vision, like what do I want to do next year and the year after, and then eventually you'll start to extend your vision out. But I think those are the things that I sort of, after reflecting on my experiences, I think are kind of important that are in the book.
You've been watching the Bizgnus podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. Thanks for watching.